Right. So what follows is a mostly unedited stream of consciousness. I've taken out some pauses that were just too long of me getting diagnosed with ADHD. I thought it would be interesting to have this recorded for future reference. I've also intentionally not cleaned my apartment because this is ADHD reality, I suppose. It's certainly my reality, the messy apartment. And you can see there's caulk on the table. There is a cake springform. There is a bottle of a gin on the countertop, and just a and an unfinished painting on the wall. You can't really see, but it's Mickey Mouse from Fantasia that I painted when I had the flu, and I never finished it. So this is the ADHD apartment, and this is my reality, and this is my rant. So, I was diagnosed with ADHD yesterday, which is pretty interesting, and I would say life-changing or life-explaining. Of course, I've only used the medication for one day. I'm not on it now. It's worked off, but I've used it at work today. But of course, we have no idea. I have no idea where this is going. It'll be an interesting ride. So I thought it would be useful to record my reaction to this the day after. Yesterday, that was not a good idea for me to reflect on the day because it was too fresh, and afterwards I went to a party, which is something that I do. I go out and I dance and I drink too much. And looking back, even that would be something that I would link to my ADHD. Anyway, my thoughts are all over the place, as they are usually, as they have been my entire life, and as they are now, because I'm not on medication, and so I'm just old ADHD me right now. So, what happened was, I was at a rave, there we go, again, a while ago, and I met this person. We started talking. I asked him if he was on anything, and he told me he had used his ADHD medication, which is amphetamine, I suppose. I mean, I'm not an expert, but that's what he told me. It was basically speed, and he used it as a kind of party drug by just using it later, or maybe he had skipped a dosage. I guess that's what it was. He'd skipped a dosage earlier and then took twice the dosage. And then it still had the stimulating effect on him that speed would have on a non-ADHD person. And then I was on something as well. So I was very happy to talk to him. Let's just put it at that. And we started talking about his ADHD, and I was saying how I'd always suspected that I would have ADD. Because I'm not necessarily physically hyperactive, but in my mind, I know I'm so hyperactive. I can't sleep, I can't focus. My attention span is perilously low. So I've always suspected I have this, but I've always procrastinated going to a doctor for this, which is actually another typical ADHD thing, procrastinating. And then at 8 a.m., we were standing outside the party, the sun was coming up, and I was still on my thing, and I sort of promised him that I was going to see a doctor. At that point, I was like, I saw everything so clearly, and I said, I'm going to go see a doctor for this. The time has come. And I did. So that's good. Even after I was, a couple days later, I did call my doctor and I did make an appointment, and I got myself checked. And so that happened yesterday. And there were questionnaires where, every answer was pretty much yes. Like, do you ever notice that your attention span is shorter than other people's? Yes. Do you ever notice that you get distracted, that you don't finish things, that just everything was like yes, 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 yes. Then I talked to a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and then they made me do a test. So I was not on any medication at this point. It was like they put a motion sensor on my head, and I had to do a game for 20 minutes where I had to click on a clicker if the same shape or color came up in the screen twice in a row or more. And so I had to do that for 20 minutes. And it was a long 20 minutes because it was so boring, and it would be boring to anyone. But for me to sit still and try and focus for 20 minutes, it was a really, really long 20 minutes for me. So saw the results. It was very clear that I had been distracted, and then I had to come back to it, and then I was distracted, and then I came back to it over and over and over again, which is my life in a nutshell, basically. And they saw that I was impulsive. That's how they put it, which means that sometimes I clicked even when I didn't need to, and then I thought, oh, why did I just click? But I did it anyway. So it was a typical ADHD outcome, and I liked the fact that it was black on white. I mean, it was a computer test, and it came out on a piece of paper, and you saw the statistics, which was nice to me because I've had therapy in the past, and I've had different diagnoses, and it always feels a little bit vague. So it was nice to have something black on white. So they concluded, after all that I was a good candidate for ADHD. Predominantly inattentive, I suppose, is the subtype, although I believe they don't actually use that anymore, also because I did have an aspect of the regular physically hyperactive kind, which has its own name, but I forgot. And you could see by using the motion sensor on my head that during the test I was moving a lot more than a normal person would have, even though they're small movements. So I'm not the typical ADHD person, the boy who jumps up and down all day, the Winnie the Pooh's Tigger type. I was never that. But so it was evident that I do actually have a little touch of the other ADHD type, which I suppose I should have suspected, because I do twitch. I mean, I'm twitching now, and I do, get up from my chair all day at work and get coffee, and I do move a lot. So I probably had ADHD, and they gave me a pill. They gave me Ritalin, or actually it was something that was like Ritalin. It was Dex or something. Anyway, they gave me that, and I had to wait for an hour and a half. And I came back and I did the test again, and we looked at the results, and it was a world of difference. And I thought it didn't really. I mean, I was sitting there in the waiting room, and I was trying to read a magazine, and I was still not really reading it from beginning to end as I would expect a normal person to. I was still sort of going, my eye was going all over the page, and I was reading this, and then I was reading that, and my attention went all over the place. So I thought, I'm not really noticing a big difference. I was calm. I was surprisingly calm, but I have calm moments even, when I'm not on any drugs. So I wasn't expecting much, but you could see again on that piece of paper, you saw the statistics and the numbers, and you saw my movements and the amount of right and wrong answers that I gave, and it was a world of difference. And all of a sudden, all my levels were at normal people levels. And then I had to cry for a moment because it was so evident, and it was right in front of me. And so they told me, yeah, you probably have ADHD, and we're going to put you on this medication. They put me on a relatively new version of this drug where normally you have to take 3 a day. It's called Vyvanse, I guess, although I have a different brand name. And you take 1 pill and for the entire day, essentially. So you take it at 8 a.m. and it starts to work off somewhere after dinner. So that's what I'm taking, and I've taken 1 today. And it was really good. I mean, I was at work. I have an office job, and so I have to focus, and I have to sit in a chair, and I have to do boring stuff for 8 hours. And it was so much easier. And the interesting thing is, it was also kind of it uplifted my mood. It was almost like an antidepressant. It was almost a little bit like Molly, the party drug, somewhere around noon, where I actually felt euphoric. And I'm not sure that will last, but I do have a mild form of depression, which is sort of simmering in the background all the time. So I'm not terribly depressed, but I'm always I have a little touch of melancholy in me all the time. I'm just sort of used to that, basically. And so this might actually help that as well, I hope, a little bit. But I certainly did feel very happy, unusually happy, somewhere around noon. And that was very nice. And I was very calm. And I drank a lot of coffee without feeling guilty about it, because that is another very interesting thing. I've always been a major, major coffee junkie. And I actually came into the ADHD Center with a grande cup of Starbucks. And I drink a lot of coffee. And people ask me, when I drink coffee at night, they go, you probably won't be able to sleep after that. And I just know that that's nonsense, because, yeah, I won't be able to sleep, but the cup of coffee isn't going to make a difference. That's just me. Whether I have coffee or I don't, my sleeping patterns are shit. I mean, I procrastinated, and then I lie in bed staring at the ceiling. Coffee doesn't really make a difference. But I do like coffee, and I guess it must have done something for me, because I've had this habit for as long as I can remember. But so it turns out that coffee actually helps you feel relaxed and focused when you have ADHD. So I still have to completely dive into the science of this. But what I've been told, basically, in layman's terms, is that ADHD is it's a lack of stimulants in your brain. So you're actually below the level of stimulants of a normal person. And that means that any type of stimulant will actually help you get to those normal levels and feel like a normal person. Now, I've heard this about speed, about amphetamines, that if you take if you take amphetamines, when you have ADHD, it actually helps calm you down. And I've also heard that Ritalin is essentially speed, and that people who don't have ADHD do take it like a party drug, or to help them focus for school or whatever task they have to do. So it's like a miracle drug, like modafinil, for instance, which I've also tried in the past, but that's a different story. But the point is that it turns out that this coffee habit makes sense completely, which was astonishing to hear. I had no idea. I mean, I always felt guilty about all the coffee I drank. I thought, like, oh, like my heart's probably going to explode at some point, or, I'm probably not going to be able to sleep after this cup of coffee. I've always felt bad about it. But now that I look back at it, it just makes so much sense. So that's very interesting. And a lot of things make sense. I guess anyone who gets diagnosed with ADHD must do this thing where you sort of reflect on your life, and all of a sudden everything starts to make sense. I used to work as an editorial freelance, like an illustrator for a while. And I would procrastinate whenever I had an assignment. And then I would do it at like hours before the deadline, and I'm talking in the middle of the night. So if my deadline was 9 a.m. on a Thursday, I would still be working on it at 7 a.m. That's how much I procrastinated. And I would work at night because I just kept putting it off, and I told myself that it helped me to feel relaxed and calm at night because there's nothing disturbing you, the phone isn't ringing, and now looking back at that, it just makes so much sense. It must be such a typical ADHD thing. I had, for a while when I was still living with my mom, I had graduated from art school. I didn't have a job, which freaked me out. So I had terrible anxiety, and I didn't know what to do with myself. But you have to do something with yourself, and especially, well, me, at that point, I mean, I couldn't just sit still, just lounging around wasn't an option, so you have to do something. So what I did was I started baking, obsessively. I mean, there would be cakes and cakes and cakes, and there would be all these things that nobody needed, that I didn't even want to eat necessarily, but I kept making them because it gave me something to do, and gave me something to do with my hands. It's repetitive work. It just sort of helps you clear your mind. I guess that would go for anyone, but I needed it. I really, really needed it. And my mom won't even touch cake because she's afraid she'll get fat. So there was absolutely no reason for these cakes, but I just kept making them. And it just makes so much sense now. All these things make sense. And it'll be very, very interesting to see what life will be like on this drug. Yeah, it will be very interesting. Maybe pretty similar, maybe not. We'll see.